matter. A discarded soldier from a forgotten planet, sold like an object to the highest bidder. But when the empress of a dying empire walked into that auction hall, everything changed. She didn't just see a human. She saw something her world had lost: emotion, courage, and the power to defy fate. What begins as a transaction becomes a war of hearts, minds, and destiny. And in the end, one man may hold the key to an empire's survival, or its downfall. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. Rowan Halden stood with his wrists bound, staring through the glass of the transport vessel as it drifted toward the massive trade station. Lights from the structure glimmered like stars, casting reflections over the polished metal floor. He had once been a soldier, a decorated tactical officer in Earth's defense forces. Now, stripped of his rank, separated from everything familiar, he was being delivered like cargo. The traitor who captured him, a creature called Juvak, made no effort to hide his disdain. The alien had pale skin that shimmered faintly, and 3 lidless eyes that never blinked. To him, Rowan was nothing more than rare merchandise, a human, one of the Federation's newest and most curious members, ripe for exotic trade. As the transport docked, the hum of engines faded into silence. Juvak gestured with one spindly hand. His voice filtered through a mechanical translator. "Stand up, human. It's time to prepare you for display." Rowan didn't move immediately. He was trained not to show fear, but a knot had formed in his stomach. 2 years ago, Earth joined the Galactic Alliance. Humans were supposed to be protected, respected even. But Rowan had learned too late that protection had loopholes, and not every species in the galaxy cared about rules. He had been taken under the guise of a cultural study. He was never brought back. He stood slowly, muscles stiff from confinement, and followed the guards through the transport's narrow hall. As they entered the station, the temperature dropped slightly, and the air smelled too clean, like it had been recycled too many times. The corridor opened into a preparation chamber where attendants moved with quiet efficiency. They didn't speak, only gestured, scanning Rowan's body, dressing him in a plain black tunic, and taking biometric readings. Juvak watched from the corner, arms crossed, smiling in that way that never reached his alien eyes. "Decent build," one of the attendants muttered, glancing at a glowing screen. "Signs of muscle wear. Combat experience?" Juvak nodded. "Fought in your planet's border wars. Tactical specialist. High value for collectors who prefer living stories." Rowan clenched his jaw. He had risked his life for Earth, led teams in brutal conflicts far from home. And now he was a story, an artifact for someone's amusement. When they finished, Rowan was led through a long corridor lined with display platforms. Each one held a different species, some tall and reptilian, others small and furry, all with some quality deemed rare. Rowan stepped onto his platform as instructed. The lights dimmed, and above him the transparent dome revealed a view of space, endless, cold, and silent. The auction chamber filled with murmurs and movement as buyers arrived. Dozens of aliens, in flowing robes and shimmering armor, moved between the displays, voices low but curious. A smooth voice echoed from the overhead speakers. "Our next offering, a male human specimen from Terra. Note the upright posture, the defined musculature, signs of physical conditioning. This one served in his world's military. A true collector's piece." Rowan stood still, eyes forward. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing fear or shame. Whispers floated up from the crowd. "A human? They're so delicate. Short lifespans, barely worth the cost. But they're emotional creatures, so expressive." An alien with delicate tentacles instead of arms leaned close to the platform. "Can it speak?" Rowan looked directly at it. "I can speak, and I can hear." The being recoiled in surprise. Laughter echoed from one corner of the room, and Juvak smiled, clearly pleased. "As you can see, he said. Humans are responsive, adaptable. Some collectors report years of engagement from a single specimen. The bidding began. Numbers rose, slow and unsure. One buyer dropped out early, another hesitated before raising a glowing paddle. Rowan stood unmoving as the value of his life climbed by increments. But there was no enthusiasm. Interest faded. The crowd moved on. His platform began to rotate away from the main display area when everything changed. The chamber doors opened with a mechanical hiss. A silence swept through the room, thick and immediate. All eyes turned as a figure entered. A woman, or something close to one, though clearly not human. She was tall and powerful, her skin a pale gray laced with glowing lines of gold. From her back, large, curved wings shimmered with red and black feathers. Her hair flowed like liquid metal, and her eyes were solid silver, glowing slightly from within. The crowd parted instinctively, bowing their heads. Empress Sirea of Meridian, a voice announced, reverent and awed. She walked with calm grace toward Rowan's platform. The others watched her, uncertain, uneasy. The Empress of Meridian had not been seen at a public event in decades. She paused in front of him, her gaze sweeping over his body, then meeting his eyes. Rowan held her stare, refusing to look away. "What is this one's history?" she asked, voice clear and melodic. Juvak bowed low. "Military veteran, Your Grace. Earthborn, tactical specialist. A true rarity." The Empress didn't blink. "I will offer 5 million units," she said. The crowd gasped. No other bid came. No one dared. "It is done," she said, turning. "Prepare him for immediate transfer." As guards moved toward the platform, Rowan's thoughts spun. Why him? What did this Empress want with a human soldier from a forgotten planet? He would find out soon enough. Rowan Halden stood at the window of his new quarters, staring out at a sky filled with twin suns and clouds that shimmered like metal. The view was like nothing he had seen before. Far below, golden cities stretched across the surface of a copper-colored world. The buildings seemed to float, their shapes bending and twisting in elegant patterns. It was beautiful, but also completely alien. This was Meridian, home of Empress Sirea, the one who had bought him for 5 million credits without a second thought. He had no idea why she wanted him or what she planned to do with him. All he knew was that his life had changed forever. His room was more luxurious than anything he had experienced. Soft light came from glowing panels in the walls. A large bed with silk-like sheets, a private bathing area, and a small garden terrace, filled with purple plants, made it feel more like a royal suite than a prison. But he hadn't forgotten where he was. Every door had security locks. The guards outside his room didn't speak, but watched him closely. He was comfortable, yes, but not free. Later that day, a quiet knock at the door announced a visitor. A young woman with short silver hair entered, dressed in a pale blue uniform. She bowed politely. "My name is Loom," she said. "I'm your translator and guide. Her Majesty requests your presence in the central garden." Rowan didn't answer at first. His instincts told him to stay alert, to expect a trick or trap. But something in Loom's calm voice made him follow without argument. The garden was massive. It stretched under a clear dome that showed the bright skies of Meridian above. Trees with crystal-like leaves lined the paths. Flowers glowed softly, releasing scents that reminded Rowan of spices and rain. He found the Empress seated near a fountain that flowed upward instead of down, the water twisting through the air like a ribbon. She wore a gown the color of midnight, and her wings were half folded behind her like a cloak. "You find our world strange," she said without turning. "That's understandable. Meridian is unlike Earth in many ways." Rowan stepped forward, slowly, unsure how to speak to a woman who had bought him in front of hundreds of witnesses. "Why am I here?" he asked simply. She looked at him then, her silver eyes calm and unreadable. "Because you are something my people do not have," she replied. "Not just a human, not just a soldier. You represent what we forgot generations ago." Imagination, adaptability, and something else we once feared. Emotion. Rowan raised an eyebrow. You paid 5 million credits for a conversation? A small smile touched her lips. I paid 5 million credits for potential. They walked through the garden in silence for a moment. Rowan watched the way the guards kept their distance but were always near. He noticed the way others bowed their heads as they passed. Everyone respected her, or feared her, maybe both. She stopped near a tree with blue bark and motioned for him to sit on a bench. Tell me about your world, she said. Not just facts. Tell me what it feels like to live there. Rowan hesitated. Then he spoke, slowly at first, about Earth's oceans and cities, its chaos and beauty, its people and how they fought and loved and dreamed. He talked about his service in the military, the friends he lost, and the battles that left scars deeper than the ones on his skin. Siraya listened without interrupting. She asked questions, not about weapons or tactics, but about human emotions, relationships and choices. When the conversation ended, she rose. You may explore this wing of the palace freely, she said. Loom will assist you. Tomorrow we talk again. That night, Rowan sat alone on his terrace, watching the stars move across the strange sky. He thought about what she had said, about potential. Was that all he was? A symbol of something her people wanted to understand? Or was there something more? Over the next few days, he explored the palace wing. Every room was filled with a strange beauty. Walls that shimmered, lights that responded to movement, and art that seemed to change when he looked away. The palace was quiet, but alive with hidden power. The Meridian people were tall, graceful, and controlled. They spoke little and felt less. Rowan quickly saw how different he was. On the fourth morning, he was summoned to a large chamber where Siraya stood with several of her advisors. A massive star map floated above a circular table. She looked at him. We are facing conflict along our northern border, she said. You have experience with war. What do you see? Rowan examined the map carefully. He noticed patterns the others missed, enemy ships drawing attention in one area while sneaking through another. He pointed out the deception. One of the advisors frowned. Impossible. They've never used such strategy before. Which is why now is the perfect time for it, Rowan replied. Siraya's eyes glowed faintly. Adjust our defenses, she ordered. After the meeting, she asked him to stay. Alone with her, she let her guard down. You are not what I expected, she said. Your thoughts, your instincts, they surprise me. Rowan met her gaze. And what do you expect from me now? She stepped closer. That you continue to be unexpected. As she walked away, Rowan stood in the fading light, confused but curious. He didn't understand this place, or why the Empress had chosen him, but one thing was clear. His life was no longer just his own, and the game had only just begun. Rowan sat alone in the palace's observatory, a glass chamber that floated above the tallest tower. The stars here looked sharper than they did on Earth, closer somehow, as if reaching out to him. Since arriving in the Meridian Dominion, everything had changed. He had been taken as a specimen, labeled a curiosity, yet now he was being trusted with matters of war. It didn't make sense, not fully. Still, he couldn't deny the strange pull this place had on him, and on her, the Empress. Every time she looked at him, there was something unspoken in her eyes, something deeper than strategy or duty. Over the past week, he had joined several meetings with the Royal Council, where military threats to the Dominion were being discussed. At first, the advisors barely acknowledged him, but that changed after his prediction about the enemy's movement proved true. Meridian forces had shifted their defenses just in time to avoid an ambush. It was Rowan's insight that had saved them. Suddenly, the outsider was no longer invisible. He became a regular presence beside Empress Siraya during strategic briefings. Not everyone approved. The royal advisor, Talvin, still watched him with narrow eyes, and whispers followed him in the halls. They called him the Empress's shadow, or simply, the human. But none of that mattered to Rowan. He hadn't come here by choice, but now that he was here, he would not be anyone's decoration. He would prove his worth on his own terms. One evening, after a long day of council meetings, Sireya invited him to walk the palace gardens again. The night air was warm and filled with the scent of glowing flowers. "You see the world differently," she said quietly as they strolled. "Your mind works in ways that surprise even my most experienced generals." Rowan shrugged. "Maybe because I wasn't raised to think the way they do. On Earth, we learn to adapt early. Most of our problems aren't solved with strength. They're solved with thinking fast." She stopped and turned to face him. "And feeling deeply?" Her voice was softer than usual. "That's what I don't understand. Your emotions, how they guide your actions, isn't it dangerous?" Rowan hesitated. "It can be, but it can also be powerful. We fight harder for people we care about. We create because we feel. That's something you can't program or perfect." Sireya studied him in silence. Then she said, "My people abandoned emotion long ago in pursuit of perfection. Now I wonder what we lost along the way." Later that night, Rowan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what she had said. Was that the reason she had brought him here? Not for display, not just for strategy, but for understanding something her people had forgotten? The thought both flattered and frightened him. The next day, Rowan was summoned to the royal archive where the palace stored ancient knowledge and forgotten records. He was met by Maela, a Myridian historian who had shown interest in him from the beginning. "The Empress has asked me to show you these," she said, gesturing to a floating holographic screen filled with data. "These are emotional profiles. Our ancestors once experienced feelings as you do, before genetic engineering erased that trait." Rowan scrolled through the entries, seeing names, dates, and descriptions of lost emotions: joy, grief, longing. "You treated emotions like a disease," he said quietly. "Yes," Maela replied, her voice full of regret. "But now, perhaps we were wrong." As they continued exploring the records, Maela revealed another piece of information. "There's something else," she said, hesitating. "When you saved the Empress from the explosion last week, our systems recorded a neural event." Rowan frowned. "What kind of event?" "A type of synchronization. Your brainwaves aligned with hers for a brief moment. Something that should be impossible between two different species. It was as if your mind and hers connected." Rowan felt a chill down his spine. "Is that why she's been acting different?" Maela nodded. "She feels something. We don't know what it means, but she's changing. And it started with you." The next few days were tense. Rumors spread throughout the palace. Some believed Rowan had bewitched the Empress. Others thought he was a political tool. Talvin grew more aggressive, warning that humans were unpredictable and dangerous. But Sireya ignored him. She continued inviting Rowan to her side, asking his opinion, watching his reactions, learning not just from his words but from his emotions. One evening, as they looked over another map of border conflicts, she stepped closer than usual. "You've taught me something no one else could," she said. "Not just how to think differently, how to feel again." Rowan looked at her, searching for the right response. But before he could speak, an alarm blared through the palace. Emergency lights lit up the chamber. A guard burst in, breathless. "Security breach. Unknown forces in the East Wing." Sireya's eyes hardened. She turned to Rowan. "Stay here." "No," he said immediately. "I can help." Against her command, he followed the guards toward the breach. What they found was worse than expected. Saboteurs had bypassed the defenses, planting charges near the power core. The palace could have been destroyed. But Rowan, thinking fast, disarmed the explosives using materials scavenged from his surroundings. Wires from a control panel, a power cell from a nearby lamp. It was risky, but it worked. When the Empress arrived, breathless and wide-eyed, she saw the attackers subdued and the danger gone. And Rowan, hands burned but alive, standing in the center. "You saved us again," she whispered. He gave her a tired smile. Just using my fragile human mind. She reached for his hand, and for the first time she didn't look like a ruler. She looked like someone reaching out, not for a soldier or a strategy, but for a connection. In that moment, everything changed. Rowan stood at the edge of the Empress's private balcony, the wind brushing through his hair as the twin suns of Meridian began to rise. The sky was painted in soft gold and deep violet, and below, the capital city shimmered in the early light. It should have been peaceful, but Rowan's thoughts were anything but. The events of the past week spun in his mind, being taken, sold, studied, then trusted, and now something far more complicated. His heart beat faster when he thought of Empress Sireya, not out of fear anymore, but confusion. What had started as survival had become something he couldn't explain, and now he would have to choose what that meant. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Sireya entering the chamber. She wore no crown or ceremonial armor this morning, just a simple robe of deep blue, her wings folded neatly behind her. Her silver eyes met his, and she smiled faintly. "You're up early," she said softly. Rowan nodded. "I couldn't sleep." She joined him at the edge, gazing out at the glowing horizon. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then she said, "There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you from the beginning." Rowan looked at her, unsure what to expect. Sireya's voice was quiet but steady. "My people face extinction. For centuries we believed our perfection would protect us, but it came at a cost. Our genetic line has grown too narrow. Fewer of us are able to produce the next generation. I am the last of the royal bloodline who can still create life." He felt a cold knot form in his chest. "We searched for compatibility across the stars," she continued. "Your species, with your adaptability and diversity, was a rare hope. You, Rowan, are not just any human. You carry markers that align with our royal genetics. That is why you were chosen." Rowan stepped back. "So I was brought here for breeding?" His voice was low, almost shaking. "You made me feel like I mattered for this?" Sireya flinched. "At first, yes, but things changed." She reached for his hand, but he pulled it away. "I didn't expect to learn from you, to feel anything. We don't experience emotion the way humans do, Rowan. At least we didn't. But I feel something now, real, unexpected, and completely my own." He stared at her, caught between betrayal and the strange bond that had grown between them. "So what am I to you now?" she answered honestly. "Not a project, not a symbol, just someone I don't want to lose." Rowan left the balcony without another word. He needed space, time to think. In his quarters, the palace healer Tavira was waiting. She wore concern on her face and held a small device in her hands. "She told you," Tavira said gently. Rowan sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "Everything." Tavira nodded. "There's more. After the incident in the strategy chamber, when you disarmed the explosives, we studied the data. You and the Empress shared something that shouldn't be possible." Rowan frowned. "The neural connection?" "Yes," Tavira replied. "But it's more than that. It wasn't just mental alignment. It was emotional synchronization. Your presence didn't just change her mind, it's changing her biology. You're not just compatible, you're connected." He ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. "And what does that mean?" Tavira offered a tired smile. "It means the Empress is no longer the same. And neither are you." Before Rowan could respond, alarms blared through the room again. Another breach. But this time it wasn't external. A faction within the palace led by Talvin and others who feared human influence had moved to take power. Rowan raced through the halls, heart pounding. He had no armor, no weapon, but he knew how to survive. He reached the throne room just in time. Talvin stood in the center, a weapon drawn, guards frozen in confusion. "You've weakened us with your emotions," Talvin shouted at Sireya. "You've let a human poison our bloodline." Rowan stepped between them. Then take it up with me, Talvin sneered. Gladly. They fought, brutally, quickly. Talvin was stronger, faster, but Rowan was used to being underestimated. He used his speed, his knowledge of timing and space. In the end, Talvin lay on the floor, breathing hard, unable to rise. The room fell silent. Soraya approached slowly. She looked down at Talvin. Strength is not always power. Sometimes it's knowing when to change. Later, after the rebels were taken away, Rowan stood with her once more under the evening sky. She said nothing at first, just stared up at the stars. I'm still angry, he admitted. Still unsure. I don't want you to stay because you were chosen, she said. I want you to stay because you choose to. Rowan looked at her, the fear in his chest slowly fading. Then give me a reason to choose. She smiled, not with triumph, but with something tender. Because this is more than survival. It's the start of something new, for both our worlds. Rowan stepped closer. Then let's build it together. And as the stars stretched endlessly above them, two beings from different worlds stood side by side, not as ruler and subject, not as project and prize, but as partners, ready to shape a future no one could have imagined.